Hello, this is Tony Kelly, your host of Birmingham's Breakthrough TV, Our Health is Our Wealth show. And I have, not in the studio, but from his home in Leicester, Brian Simmonds. And he's our guest today on the Our Health is Our Wealth show. Brian, you came highly recommended by Carmen of the organization Stimulus in Leicester. So it's the first time of meeting, but she said to me, you have a very uplifting story. So you better make it uplifting for the viewers and listeners, because I'm about unsung heroes and heroines and positivity amongst black people. So welcome, Brian.
Welcome. Well, first off, I'm honored to be recommended to your show. You know what I mean? In terms of to hopefully uplift the viewers and into my story and what I'm involved in has been involved in.
So, Brian, let's start at the very beginning, which is your early upbringing and childhood. Tell the viewers and listeners a bit about that, please.
Well, I had a typical Caribbean upbringing. I'm originally from Birmingham, Aston. My parents both from the Caribbean, part of the Windrush generation. My father's from St. Kitts and my mother's from Montserrat. I had the typical upbringing in terms of, first generation from the Windrush generation, growing up in Birmingham, attending a primary school, attended my secondary school was Holt, so some of your viewers should remember that.
Yes.
In the uh, 80s, well, late 70s, early 80s, in terms of that. That was my early journey in terms of growing up. Typical. Went to church on the Sunday. Went Sunday school. Had a lot of freedom ish. all the typical Caribbean things we did in terms of the family. Have five siblings. I'm the second youngest in terms of group of the siblings. But like I said, I grew up a pretty typical Caribbean family in terms of the early days.
I see. Okay, that's good to hear. Just briefly tell me about your schooling. Holt Secondary School, which is right in the smack in the middle of Handsworth there. What was that like for you? Very briefly, please.
My secondary school, Holt, it was for me, it was a normal secondary school. The majority of students was a mixture of Asian and black in terms of growing up. So it was similar to my upbringing growing up as in the area I grew up in Aston. It was a time where for first generation Caribbean people, it was a good journey to find out where you fit in terms of that. But it was a typical growing up until I was about 14. Why I say that, my parents, as most Caribbean people wanted to do, was return back to the Caribbean. My parents decided they wasn't going to the Caribbean, so I returned back to the Caribbean at the age of 14 just before I was 15.
Okay.
So we packed up, me, my mom, my younger brother, and my sister went back to, for me, go lived in the Caribbean. We resided in the islands of Montserrat, which was definitely a new adventure for myself.
Right. Now you talk about the island of Montserrat. I have friends in Montserrat. Was that about the time when they had the volcano eruption?
Well, I'm older than I look. So it's well before that. It was 1984.
Oh,
I
I see.
immigrated back.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a while before that Pacific volcano. I think the volcano was about 2000, around that kind of
Early to
time,
right.
before 2000. But yeah, I went in the 80s, just after the riots. I remember the riots well.
Okay.
So I went in 1984. So I went back into school. That was an eye opener, just that alone, because that's the first time I went to a school where there was 100% black
Black
people
people.
and
Right.
black teachers, which I didn't experience that in the UK. As you know, I only had one black teacher I can remember growing up
Right.
in terms of in the UK. But going to the Caribbean, it
Complete.
was every teacher was black and the students was black, and the whole ethos was so inclusive. I was a bit frightened in the environment
Yes.
because the whole teaching thing was you had to respect the teachers in terms of that because they knew your mom and kind of stuff.
Yes,
You know what I mean? In
it's
terms of when
small
they grew up.
communities. Yes, indeed.
So it was that kind of ethos which I struggled with living in the Caribbean because I was born in the UK. I was
Yes.
14 years old. I was at that age where I think I knew everything.
Thing.
And it was very hard to adjust to that lifestyle of schooling in the Caribbean compared to in the UK. So I struggled a lot for the first couple of years.
Okay. So tell me, how long did you then end up spending in Montserrat before deciding to return to the land of your birth, England?
Oh, I was there for 6 years, but no, just
Uh-huh.
over 5 years. So I came back just before I was 19 to go to study electronics engineering. So I spent 5 years in the Caribbean, which I loved. Now, at the time, I didn't like it. If you know anything about Caribbean, you knew about cockroaches, yeah, and
Yes.
lizards, and all them little things where you kind of had in the UK, so to speak. And it was eventful, you know what I mean? I really learned a lot. It kind of really got me focused on my future, the kind of thing that I wanted to do.
Do.
They kind of really helped me in terms of that. I was a bit kind of a not a wild child in the UK, but I wasn't really that focused in terms of education. But the Caribbean definitely kind of balanced me in terms of the importance of education, and and it kind of instilled that value system of why is it important, which I didn't have in the UK.
Right. But you did come back and you went into education, and it was so how long was the studying for? What did you end up doing after?
Well, I studied to be an electrical engineer. I've done 3 years of that. Um, I think in the Caribbean, I started out in the Caribbean when I went to college for 1 year, and I came to the UK, and I loved it. I always liked to make things, so for me, it was a natural progression into the kind of field I wanted to get into. I did all that, passed, started working uh, in the field of electronic engineering.
And you don't need to name the companies that you worked for, but what was it like as a qualified black man as an engineer in the world of work? Just tell us a bit about that.
Um, it's funny you say that because it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy working in that field. I thought I would have, but I didn't like it. I wanted to go back and study something else. I didn't feel comfortable in that working environment. It wasn't, I thought it was what I wanted to do. So I struggled in that environment in terms of working in that environment. And it wasn't really, it didn't grasp my aspirations.
I
I was
see.
getting paid a lot of money. Well, at the time, I thought it was a lot of money, but I felt something was missing in terms of my aspirations, in terms of doing something more, in terms of that. Yeah.
So you obviously you changed field, career. What then did you branch out into?
I always had a passion about music for some reason and being my own boss and trying that new thing. So I went in to do a business course in music, music production, and music business. So I ventured into that field of music. So that's where I kind of went into just to taste it to see if I really felt that kind of feeling towards it. And I did kind of, but it still wasn't what I wanted to do. I worked with my brother. He set up his own company at that time, his partner, called Unsigned Underground, which we signed in new artists in terms of that. That's when we had what you call MySpace before Facebook,
Book
that kind of
and
stuff.
yes, yes.
So we tried all that kind of stuff. But still, I wanted more. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to try something new. Um, then I ventured into the clothing industry in terms of designing my own clothes with partners, getting it out there. And I started doing that. I started to have my first business was Zero's Fashions, which working with partners, designing my own shirts, jackets, that kind of stuff. I got the inspiration when growing up. We used to wear Gibichi. You remember the Gibichi?
Um,
And
um,
we so we use that kind of leather and material thing in terms of designing jackets and clothing, that kind of stuff. That was my first business in terms of going to be an entrepreneur. That was my first business in terms of, but it was more done. It was done in the back of the boot of the car more than a shop front. So
right,
that was
I
my
see.
first venture, being my first entrepreneur venture, so to
Right.
speak.
Okay. And then you left that behind to come on to probably where you are now.
Well,
Tell.
no, I wanted to have my own shop. So I worked trying to work towards that. So I find it off my first shop. It was in Wolverhampton. It was a sports shop. It was called IQ Sports for the Intelligent Athletes. So I had imported sportswear from America and Europe and UK and sold it. On my first shop, I had a shop in Wolverhampton, Wolverhampton City Centre, on the first floor. So that was my venture into having my own business. I had that for about 4 years, 5 years. I had that business, and
Oh,
it was very hard having your own business, but
yes.
I really got a lot out of it in terms of having my own business. But it was very stressful, and it was. I didn't realize it then it was stressful, but it became very stressful in terms of when I actually closed the shop 5 years after.
Wow, I didn't realize you had done so many things. So, all right, on this journey, then, Brian, take us through. I'm wanting to try and get to where you are now. You might have to leave
Okay,
out some gaps because of time, but
I'll speed it up. So
mm-hmm,
after that, I decided to. Well, my girlfriend at the time was working in Leicester,
mm-hmm,
so I decided to after the close of business, went to the Caribbean for a little while, 2 3 weeks, and then I decided to go to Leicester where my girlfriend was, and I started to study about mental health in terms of that and youth development. So that's where I started my venture now. So I studied about youth development and mental health. And I secured a role working for the youth service. And then I secured my role I do now for the last 20 years is working for Youth Offender Service as a practitioner in terms of
right,
that. That's working with under 18s, young offenders.
right, trying to put them back on the straight and narrow. Um,
Yes, I do try.
And at this point, I'd probably say some people like to sort of curse whether social workers and probation officers and say they're do-gooders. And my response to that is, I'm sure you'd rather be a do-gooder than a do-badder. My
Well,
jokes, they're very corny.
knowing your background in terms of that, it's important in terms of the structure and the young people you come with. See somebody who looks like you. It's very important.
Yes,
Whether you're 18 or 80, it doesn't matter. Once I see somebody who looks like you, it's for you to set that tone that you're there to help.
yes,
Yeah?
yes,
Because as working youth offending service, young people are there on a statutory order. That means they have to be here.
yeah, yes.
Yeah. So we're trying to get the best out of them, try to put them on the straight and narrow, try to put them on the path, all the kind of thing we're trying to develop. And so when I say a black young person, I'm black as well. It could be my nephew, my niece, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yes.
So he's trying to put them right on the right track. Hence why I'm still here after 20 years working in that specific field. Still trying to empower young people because I know how hard it is for a black young person, specifically where they have a criminal record and trying to move forward,
Forward, yeah.
and the skills they need to really overcome certain obstacles. So I'm aware of that. So in terms of that, I haven't just came out, plucked myself out and put myself in there. I live the experience. I grew up in Aston. I grew up in
Yes.
my community. I know who you are. They might not believe me when I speak to them initially,
Yes. Yes.
but when they get to know me, they realize,
Realize,
oh,
yes.
you
Yeah.
understand? So yes,
Yes.
I do understand.
I like that. So, there you are. For the last 20 plus years, you've been dealing with young people, trying to keep them on the straight and narrow, which has to be applauded. How has that impacted and your whole work setup with lockdown, COVID-19, pandemic, and all of that? Have you still been able to engage with young people and assist and enable and empower them throughout
Well,
this
in terms
worrying
of
time?
it, it's been difficult because obviously it's hard to engage young people online. That's not their forte. They are social media. But with the field we do, it's not social media, it's online. So it's been difficult because it's young people there on a statutory order, which they have to be here. So you have to engage. And it's hard to engage in terms of when you're talking through a screen,
Yes.
what I mean? But because of social distancing, you can't take them out, engage them into education, engage them into constructive leisure activities, all the elements in terms of that. It's been a struggle, but we still have to persevere in terms of empowering them to move forward.
Right. Let me come back closer to leave work for a second. You yourself have, like the rest of us, been in lockdown, second time around. As an immediate family, how has that impacted upon you and family members and so
Yeah,
on?
I struggled because I had close family members, very close family members, who passed away, and having to go to a funeral, which is only 30 people, and not be able to go to another funeral, and only 6 people allowed. So that was a struggle. Just culturally with us, we need, we need to express and need to say our goodbyes
Yeah.
in terms of that. For example, we have 9 nights,
Mm-hmm.
which is part culturally who we are,
Yes.
saying goodbye in terms of our spiritual element of
Mm-hmm.
our people being passed over, kind of stuff. That was not done. It was done in a way where you couldn't come together. So missing out on all the kind of traditional stuff and cultural stuff, which is who we are as people, was very difficult on a personal level and also on a community level because I'm well involved in the community in Leicester. So that was a struggle as well.
I see. Well, my condolences on you mentioning the deaths of close ones, loved relatives. Sad to hear. It is a sad time for quite a lot of people in that regard. Um, time will not allow us to talk through all the community initiatives that you're involved in because
Okay.
your list is long. But so I'm gonna give a flavor of them. Like the Holistic Living Network is one in question, and there's several others. You take us through. Choose three. You might offend people, but choose 3 or 4 which are dear to your heart and you're really passionate about, and you want us, the listeners and viewers, to hear more about what you are doing as a black man in Leicester in terms of community initiatives. But this is alongside your day job. Am I right in
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that?
This is long term my say
Right.
so.
Okay. Over
Okay,
to you
let me
then.
start with the organization which we ended, funny enough, at the end of last year, just because it was Leicester Black History Consortium. Yeah, it was formed to kind of bring the community together in terms of celebrating who we are all year round. It was not just left to Black History Month; it was all year round.
Good.
So we used a combination of celebrating and really putting on a platform who we are as people in Leicester, as Black people, and how we best celebrate it. So it's working with partnership with all organisations, all groups, just to improve their or to support what they're trying to do for the community. And I think that was missing. Everybody was doing individual stuff. So we formed a consortium to really bring people together, to really highlight the importance of we do in the community for 12 months of the year, not just for Black History Month, or in Leicester it was called Black History Season, and before they changed to Black History Month. So that was really my passion, really kind of coordinating different things, whether it's the educational system, whether it's the elders, just bringing it all together. And that is my passion in terms of driving that forward, bringing people together, really pinpointing what we need as a community, and really put it on a platform. So that was really my passion, and I've been doing that for the last uh, 8 years. Yeah.
Right.
So in terms of that, my other passion is, well, becoming involved in the community. You get very spiritually. You get very. It becomes part of the furniture.
Yes.
Yeah. And that got me involved in Holistic Living Network, which is a group of holistic practitioners working together to really get the message out to our people in terms of the other side of health and well-being.
Well-being.
And
Right.
that was that's where I met Carmen, and in terms of working together. And it was very important to show our community a holistic approach to health. There's 2 approach. As we growing up, we always use the words, mind, body, and
So.
spirit. Yeah. And what does it actually mean? In terms of mind, body, and spirit. And that is, taking on board everything in terms of, when you go to church, you take in the spirit. What does that mean in terms of the health element? So we kind of incorporate that element of health. So, so it's not just taking medication, it's all the other elements in terms
Yes.
of that. If your mind is strong, your body will be strong. If your spirit is strong, your body will be strong. If you take medication and you're not doing the other two, you have to have the balance right. So it's really educating the community regarding driving that forward, understanding that, bringing us together, and all ages. It's important. In terms of that. If you have diabetes and you're not doing the exercise and eating well, it won't help you no matter how much pills you take. You know what I mean? I know you're expert on that element there, and it's stuff like that. You know, from the big C to anything else, you have to have the balance of health, exercise, and spirit. You have to drive the spirit. If your spirit don't feel it, it won't happen. It won't happen. You can't just do one and alone into that. So that was the second project. My final project is what I'm doing with my niece. It's called Black Xmas Matters. Yeah. And in the first insert, you say, "Oh, Christmas. Why not Christmas?" What? But what it's about? It's about reclaiming the X. What the X mean to us? What are we missing in the X in terms of that? What other things are we as a people are missing? What is our X factor? You know what I mean? In terms of that, what we are missing the X in terms of when we celebrate. So X Christmas Matters is when we come together, we celebrate the X. You know what I mean? In terms of that. So that's the ethos I'm working with now. We have a clothing line with that, what linked with Kwanzaa. And it's just bringing people together on different things. And, you know, I just, like I said, for me, community is me. You know, I still love my community every day. I love to see the smile. I love to see how we are. And that's who I am. So that's the kind of stuff I do in the community in terms of empower. There are other stuff about Black men's health, which I obviously we haven't got time to go in that, but also
No. I'd like you to touch on black men's health, because black men on the whole, they don't, mainly, generally, the doctors, not in touch with their feelings, not in touch with their emotions, tend to suffer in silence and bury their head in the sand like the ostrich. So please touch on black men's health. So the spouses and the wives can hear it, and the men and the young boys can also hear it. That is important, Brian, very important.
All right, we started a project last year, June, Father's Day, called Black Men, It's Time for a Real Talk. Yeah. Because, you know, we small talk. Men do talk. Men talk a lot, but we small talk. Yes. Yeah. And we don't real talk. And that's the thing. And it's what we did. We're trying to bridge the gap from small talk to real talk. Yeah. And why we do the things we do. Why don't we go doctors? Why all these things, what you mentioned. Why don't we do that? Yeah. This is a generational thing. Our young people are 18, same problem. Same thing. So we work on how do we, one, soften the masculinity. But that's what we need to do. Soften the masculinity. Unfortunately, what we tend to do is crush the masculinity. We have to soften it. Because if you fear something, you can't just say you shouldn't fear for that. Because fear is normally an illogical thought pattern. Yeah? And we have to understand, I'm not trying to tell you shouldn't fear that. I'm trying to tell you how to soften the fear so you can be productive. And that's what we work on. It's not necessarily, like I said, all the things you said is totally 100%. But if I can soften the masculinity, create a bridge from small talk to real talk, we can get real change. And that's the thing. We're not doing enough about real talk, but we have to make a bridge for them. Because all the thing you're saying is correct, but then where's the bridge to real talk? We can't just tell people, what cross the bridge? It's not happening. You have to make it, is that big safe? It looks a bit dodgy. You know, you have to create the bridge so it's a solid bridge for them to walk into real talk. But that's the kind of stuff we do. Meaningful, discuss the issues of suicide, discuss the issue of health, discuss the issue of all the issues which we have as Black men, you know, of depression. We have to create a bridge. If we don't, we'll be doing this in the next 20 years saying exactly the same thing. We don't go doctors, we don't do all the kind of thing because we have to create a bridge. So that's the kind of work I do with Black men in terms of that.
Well, I'm so pleased that I mentioned that you need to talk about Black men's health, because you said so much there. Let me bring it closer to home. Apart from the things you're doing out there, what do you, Brian Simmonds, do personally in terms of your physical health? How do you keep yourself physically active, mind, body, and soul ticking over? What do you actually do? I'm not saying all viewers will have to do this, but what do you do?
Okay. Well, the first thing I learned in terms of seeing different therapists and that kind of stuff, people in the holistic thing, is how to breathe. Yeah. I didn't know how to breathe. Yeah. And once I learned how to breathe, it makes a lot more sense. Yeah. As simple as it is, learn how to breathe in the morning, take proper breaths. And this is I think one of your person you interviewed, Colin Sims, I've seen, he taught me how to breathe. Yeah. And that helps, just breathing. You know, we hear about meditation a lot. You know what I mean? As it, you know, that as well. Just relax your body, in the morning time just before you start. You know what I mean? And take a little walk. And then the simple things I do, I'm over 50, so them the little things I do on a regular basis, which is not nothing too hard to do, but it makes a big difference.
And it's not costing you not it's not costing you anything. You're not having to go to the gym to do.
I eat healthier. I no longer eat meat and stuff like that
Right.
because I realized in terms of that kind of
Mm-hmm.
them little things. But it took me a long time before I got rid of all
Right,
the
right
meat stuff.
there.
But it's a natural progression. Not saying everybody should cut out meat,
Mm-hmm.
but what I mean. And luckily now you have a lot of alternative stuff, which I never had before. I only knew you have like plant-based stuff and all that kind of. And it's a lot of information out there. That's me personally, and it
Yes.
works for me.
Mm.
But it's I found a bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, I found a
Mm.
bridge, my bridge, but I found it was safe to go there. And that's the thing when I talked about creating a bridge from my lifestyle to a more holistic
It's a
lifestyle.
lifestyle,
The
right.
bridge has to be made for that to happen. And everybody has to find their own bridge.
Okay. So you're saying this holistic lifestyle, and I get it, I understand it. Within that, are you yourself, Brian, a man of faith? And tell us a bit about that. Are you a man of faith?
I am a Method. I understand spirituality a lot more now because when you're growing up, as I grew up in the UK, we was kind of forced to go to church. Yeah. But the good thing about that, it got me a point of reference. Yeah. It got me a point of reference of spirituality, which is very key for us to have. You know what I mean? Once I had that point of reference, I'd explore different elements of spirituality. What does that mean? How does I feel? What is the higher being? What does that mean to me on a daily basis? You know what I mean? And because I had that initial point of reference, I can explore that. I can explore, I can challenge, I can have a discussion, and that alone would uplift me spiritually in terms of that. But we know there's a creator,
Mm-hmm.
but the things we don't ask the question in terms of that spiritual element, in terms of that, in terms of if our people are waiting to enter the kingdom of God, where are they? Can we speak to them? Can we communicate to them? I don't mean like dopey and that kind of food. I mean on
Right.
a spiritual level. You know what I
Right.
mean? In terms of that, embrace that. You know what I
Right.
mean? We always says if someone passes away close to us and something happens, we always look to the sky and says, you know what? Thank you for looking upon me.
Right.
And what does it actually mean? How do we explore that? How do we embrace that element
Right.
and that energy of our ancestors? So that helps
Okay.
me in terms of understanding that on a bigger
So,
picture.
okay, so let me take the spirituality one stage further, and if you have a take on it, what about African spirituality?
That is the root of it. Yeah, I had to embrace that before I even moved any further. You know what I
Right.
mean? And by understanding that the root, yeah, you embrace it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's all encompassing in terms of how we think. I class myself as an African. Yeah, it took me years to understand what that actually meant. Yeah, but I'm comfortable with that because I understand it's not just about the wording, it comes with everything else in terms of that spiritual element. In terms of that,
Mm-hmm.
I remember the day when the Roots came on for the first time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the first time we kind of as first generation, Windows generation, we kind of grasped what Africa is. We was frustrated. How can you treat my brother like that? And growing up, we was kind of distancing ourselves from Africanism. But watching Roots, looking back, it kind of embraced that. But we was kind of, yo, I'm African, but you didn't want to say it out loud, but you knew inside
Yes,
that
yes.
was part of who you was. And we
Mm-hmm.
still carry that. And that is the kind of thing when we reflect back on and say, well, I knew it was always part of me. You know what I mean? But you had to find the bridge. I always say the bridge. You had to create the bridge to cross over
Crossover,
to
right.
really embrace it.
Oh.
When people tell you, you don't necessarily embrace it. You got to create your own bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create your own bridge, then you can embrace it and reflect really, really the fullness of Africanism plus in terms of our spiritualism.
Right. This is powerful stuff here. um, Let me then ask you, Brian. Some people shy away from it, but I do ask the question: what would you say is your greatest achievement in life so far?
My greatest achievement has to be my two daughters. That has to be my greatest achievement. Yeah. Um, um, because I learned from my late father what he taught me, and I have the opportunity instill that into my daughters. That's the greatest thing, gift I could ever have. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know, and that trumps everything. That trumps any kind of awards, any kind of anything at all. That trumps it. You know what I mean? You know, and that is my greatest achievement. It always was my greatest achievement because you kind of put a price on
Fatherhood.
when you are now, when you are gone, they will be there, and their kids will be there, and so on and so on and so on. You know what I mean? So that has to be a great accomplishment in terms of that. You know, whether they turn out top in their profession or whatever the case may be, they still be your children. They still be your greatest accomplishment in terms of on this earth and how we see life and life itself.
I'm pleased you said that because we've done quite a few of these interviews and I've asked a number of people, not everybody, and the running theme is family, whether children or grandchildren, but that seems to come across quite a lot, regardless of everything else that's happening out there. So there's
Well,
the
it's who we are as people. I
yeah.
think we've grown up in a certain way to know what family is. Yeah, you know, it's changed over the last couple of decades in terms of what's important, but that's because of the society we live in. But you know, it's still instilled with us.
Right.
It's still in there. We live in a day where Christmas was a time where it wasn't all about having 20 presents.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It wasn't about that. It was about coming together. You know, like I said, I was fortunate to live in the Caribbean. I understand. I lived in a place where you kill the big hog and the goat fresh, and you cook up. I remember all that. It was like, yeah, what's all this? We'll cook the big old hog kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it was seeing the woman down the road, Miss May down the road, or Auntie up down the road. All of that. That was all part of it.
It takes
wasn't,
a village to
about
raise a child.
sitting around and chilling.
Yes.
In terms of that.
All right. Let me then move on to lots of community involvement alongside your professional job, working as in the youth offending services. How you relax, downtime, me time, chill out. What do you do?
My downtown is my community. It sounds kind of
Really?
but that gives me the buzz. Helping people in my
Okay.
community give me the buzz. It does. Because if I can show people how to fall back in love with their community, that kind of gives me what I need in my downtime. I always do my girls and do my thing with my girls, which is fine, which is just normal thing I do anyway. So,
Yes.
but getting my community to love themselves again, fall in love. When we were growing up, we used to love the community, we used to love each other.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We used to love our friend up the road, family. It was all kind of one big family.
Yes.
Yeah, and to see that whittled away, for me, my dad time to see that. When I see something like that, it really helps me, and for me to continue doing that, it definitely is a key in terms of that.
I'm going to throw this question in, which off the top of my head. Do you think the fact that you went to Montserrat and you stayed there for around about 6 years, did that have some impact on why you're such a community-orientated person that you are today? Did that really cement it for you or had some bearing?
I think my father was all the community man,
Okay.
and he opened the first South Aston Centre. You know what I mean? He did the first street party for the Queen Jubilee. You know what I mean? He done the play schemes, and I didn't realize that then growing up. I just thought it was that. But then looking back,
Yes.
I was always destined to do what I do.
Yes. Yes.
I was always destined for that.
Yes.
Not realize it growing up, but
Oh,
then when you
yes.
look back on all the things he instilled in us
Yes.
in terms of community, he was a community man. Through and through. It's just instilled that specific part of who I am and what I'm trying to achieve.
Right. Well, all I'd say, I hope this message passes on to your two daughters, and that they listen to this and think, yes, we're going to follow in our dad's footsteps. Let me ask you then about social media platforms, because we could talk forever, because your curriculum vitae, CV is so huge in terms of all the things that you do. People might say, okay, I want to get in touch with Brian Simmonds. Tell us the social media platforms, websites, etc., that they can link up with you, please.
Well, my new organization is First Contact 2.0. You can catch us on our social media. which is on First Contact 2.0 on Facebook and Instagram. But our website is www.firstcontact20.uk. And that's where we started our new project. It's a community-based project. Engaging, that's another thing I do as well. But like I said, engaging in the community. And also in terms of the new project I'm starting, which is blacklivesmatter.com. So you can get us on the social media, Facebook, Instagram. So them are two platforms which I'm on at the present moment in time in terms of different activities and things like that.
Right. I like the Black Lives Matter bit. So you're all for the whole issue of, there's a big drive to teach more black history in schools, not just for the black kids, but for the white kids as well, so they can get a sense of what's happening, the past reflects the present, reflects the future. So part of that is involved in some of what you've said there, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's when I started Let's the Black Kids Consortium, I did a yearly conference with our young people. I took 60 young people out every year into the conference, bringing black professionals, black speakers to really empower them in terms of that. We was fighting for this for years. This is not a new thing, as you know. It's a continuing thing we did from time. So yes, I'm always involved in terms of empowering young people. And we know, it's a continued battle to get things moving forward. But like I said, educating our children starts from home. We can give them the point of reference. They can grow from the point of reference. They can't grow on a point of reference from school. It has to start from home, and then the growth starts within in terms of the community and the people around you.
Brilliantly said. Brian, the time has flown by, and I must say, from what Carmen of Leicester has said in terms of what you do, you've just touched the surface. You probably could go on for another 40 minutes, but
I can.
We are limited. But it was a nice introduction that Carmen from the organization Stimulus made in saying, get Brian Simmonds in. He has a story to tell. And you've proven without doubt how influential you are in the community and how much you are involved. And it has been a pleasure speaking to you, Brian. I hope you have found the experience on Birmingham's Breakthrough TV, Our Health is Our Wealth show, equally rewarding.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you. For me, just to get a platform, especially to talk about black men's health. Yes. For me, that's one of my deep passions, because I'm a black man myself, and I know in terms of getting it out there, helping other brothers is something which I love to, any opportunity I have, I like to do. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for definitely giving the opportunity just to kind of enlighten your viewers.
You're welcome. Well, as we would say, you go good or walk good, and until some other time in the future. Thanks a lot, Brian, once more.
Thank you.
Thanks to our sponsors, the Afro-Caribbean Millennium Center on Dudley Road, New Style Radio 98.7 FM, Breakthrough Media Studios, and Breakthrough TV.